there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I am going to be focusing on using our stencils, and this is obviously a really simple technique, but it takes so little supplies that it is a fun technique to remember, and that is using same color stenciling to get a really awesome effect. Now, to start off with my cards today, I am using some of the Gina masking paper. And you'll see later on when I add ink over ink over ink on top of this masking paper, and there is no bleeding through, and this is the main reason that I choose to use this one. I have used a fair few other methods and other kind of papers and masking papers and things, but this one is really holds up to all those layers of ink, which is important to me when I have worked so hard on a project and then when you kind of finally peel back the masking paper, there is nothing more disappointing than seeing that some of the ink has bled through. Anywho, I am just making up some strips of the masking paper here. You could definitely try other methods and other masking things, or you could just use a panel and then stick it on top. But I decided that I wanted to make one layer cards straight onto the card bases. So I am going to pull off the release paper for these, and this is going to give me the exact border that I want around the outside of my cards. I think I did these 1/2 inch. I'm pretty sure these were 1/2 inch around the outside. So you could always just, if you had a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, you would be able to create a 4 1/2 by 3 1/4 inch card front, and cut it down to that size and then pop it on the front, and you would get almost the exact same look if you liked that way as well. Just another way to do things. So I'm going to make 3 complete finished cards today, and I do want to show you something else because it is whatever inks you have are going to work. So I am going to show you the same technique using 3 different types of ink today. So once I have finished up putting all the masking paper on here, I've got my 3 card bases ready to go to the next step. And for this, as I said, 3 different inks. So the first one that I'm going to be using is a pigment ink. That's the VersaFine Clair. The next one is the dye ink. I have the Hurley dye ink. And then the last ones are the hybrid inks, which are the Distress Oxides. They have both dye and pigment properties. So first of all, I'm going to be using the Clear Skies color, which is just a light blue color. And for all 3 of these inks, I'm going to be using a domed foam blending tool. I find these the easiest for getting really good results. However, I don't recommend that. See, I have a brand new one here, and I'm just adding, I did actually add some more ink off color. The more ink, the kind of more you've used your domed foam blending tools, then the more sort of even ink your coverage you'll kind of get when you are ink blending. It is definitely hardest when you have a brand new one. So this was a brand new one, and my results aren't perfect, but that's the thing with this technique. That's the beauty, is that you don't have to worry about it because you honestly do not notice it, and I'll show you in the end. You do not notice at all how blotchy this looks at the moment. So I'm just pulling in 1 stencil. Any stencils are going to work here. Anything that you have in your stash, pop it down over top, and then I just use the same color to go over top. I did use a kind of light hand and made sure that my domed blender didn't have too much ink ready to go when I was doing the ink blending. I go over the top lightly, and then this is honestly a really simple, gorgeous background. And I tend to forget these kind of really simple backgrounds, but these cards are going to end up really gorgeous with using that simple frame and this really simple technique. And this is something that I think is fun to remember and come back to. This time I'm using the Distress Oxides, exact same thing. I'm using the Mowed Lawn color, which is a green one, and then I'm going to, actually this one is going to be a Christmas card. So I'm using these leaves, this foliage kind of stencil here. It's got little dots and some foliage, just really nice and simple. I love this design, and I'm just going over this a little bit heavier with a little bit more ink, dipping my blending tool into the ink more often. Whereas when I did the background color, I don't think I dipped it in more than once to begin with because I want a really light coverage of ink. And this background, this stencil actually is gorgeous, but it creates a really nice background, very simple. So just using 1 ink color and we get this gorgeous background here. And then for the final one, I'm going to be using a pigment ink. Again, I like the VersaFine Clair range. I have very few ink pads. In fact, you're kind of seeing the 3 that I have. I've chosen to go with the Distress Oxides in my collection. I have the Simon Hurley dye inks in my collection, and I have the VersaFine clear inks in my collection. I do not have full sets of any of these. I just have the colours that I like, the colours that I'm going to use most often, and I have the re-inkers for not all but most of these. Aside from the main ones like VersaFine clear, like a sticky embossing ink, and those kind of specialised like a white pigment ink, this is all the ink pads that I have, and this does me perfectly fine. I have all of the techniques kind of covered. I like to have not too many options sometimes, because sometimes I find the more options that I have, the more kind of confused and cluttered my brain gets when it comes to me sitting down and actually making cards. So here are the 3 backgrounds that we have kind of created. Very, very simple. Each of them just uses one color of ink, and now we are going to quickly turn all 3 of these into gorgeous cards. So this is the layering robin bundle set. I have been looking for some bird stamps recently, and this one is a perfect size. And again, this is a layering set, but I'm actually really going to use 1 ink per whole creation. So this is for the kind of tree stump or whatever it's meant to be down the bottom, and so I'm stamping this in the Pinecone VersaFine clear ink, so the Pinecone pigment ink, and this is just a brown ink, and this is full strength. I'm stamping the main layer, and then I have the next layer that you do. There's only 2 layers. There's kind of the outline and then filling it in. I'm going to use the exact same ink, but I'm going to use second generation, so I'm going to stamp this off. As I said, I don't have the full set. I don't even have multiple browns in pigment inks. I just have 1, so I'm making do with what I have, and this works perfectly. This gives a really nice light layer. I know it's a little bit hard to see on camera, but when I bring it up to a bit closer in a minute, you'll see that this is just the perfect amount of contrast. It fills it in nicely, it gives it lots of texture, and yet I didn't have to do any colouring. So this set is so far a really, really good one. I'm really enjoying this. Now here is the bird, creating the bird. Now there's actually kind of 3 layers to this, and I guess I'm kind of cheating because I do use the black ink for the outline. But other than that, then I'm going to use the yellow ink as well. This is the yellow is Cheerful from the VersaFine clear ink, and I'm going to ink up the next layer, and these are very easy to line up. There's kind of no mistaking. Remember that I can't get my head completely over my image, so even then I'm doing a not too bad a job of making these lined up nicely. I stamped the top bird in the full coverage, and then the second bird I did the second generation stamping, so I didn't re-ink my stamp it all. I just popped it down the next one, and that gives me that lighter look. And then the next one here, I'm going to do the last layer, and I use the full strength of the ink, and this creates the front of the bird, the breast of the bird. And then with the other one, I did actually think here, I forgot this, that I brought in the orange one, and I stamped the orange on the breast of this bird. So these gorgeous little robins are very, very simple to create, not too many layers, and very easy to line up, which is what I need, but gorgeous little birds. Now this is the bundle that I have, so there are 2 dies that go nicely over the tree stumps and the little birds. And I must admit, I quite like these. I often don't get coordinating dies because I am not a huge fan of the white border that they leave. Sometimes I feel like that just takes away from the kind of continuity of the background and then the focal points. I feel like it's a bit distracting, but the one thing I like about these Hero Arts ones is that the border around them is really quite small. So I think I was really impressed when I cut these out, and I wanted to see what they looked like a few times earlier, and I was impressed that it kind of didn't take over the image, that big thick white outline. So the perfect amount in my little opinion. Now off camera earlier, I had made a whole lot of these little birds. I was making a whole lot of little cards. I didn't film this at all, but I just thought I would show you some of the color options that I used. It was really fun. I was really enjoying myself putting these birds together because they were so easy. So there's a whole big range. I mean, you can really put any colors together, which is what I need. Now this is the leaf canopy stamp set. This is definitely a favorite. I have used this one in quite a few videos recently, but it's so versatile. And even on this really kind of bright and busy-ish background, I am going to create a little silhouette using those gorgeous leaves. You could do anything. I did think about stamping a really nice bright blue, or if you had the coordinating cuts, and you could do some contrasting colors and pop those over top, just something to go down the front. These 3 cards were really fun to make, and I decided that this one, because I had images for the other 2, just to do something a little bit different, I would use a silhouette. I haven't kind of done this technique in quite a bit, it feels like, so it was nice to come back to this. Now I am using my card bases here in my stamping platform, and therefore kind of only the back of the card base sticks, so the front of my card base does pop up a little bit. That's why I use my scissors to kind of keep it in place, to make sure that I'm stamping in exactly the same place every single time, because I have a sticky matte, low-tech kind of sticky matte there in the background. And then from that same Robin layering set, it has a whole lot of really good sentiments. So this is the other thing I like when I purchase a stamp set. It's not just about the images, even though I must admit the images in this one are very good. I really like to see some useful sentiments, kind of not filler sentiments. So I have got a couple of different options here, because I did post a card recently of a gorgeous little snowman that I created basically from scratch, from all the supplies, no specialist supplies, for a Christmas card. And I did see there was lots of comments pointing out that yes, in New Zealand we do not have snow at Christmas time, because that is the height of our summer. However, it's still lovely to be able to make those kind of things, and it's a little bit how Christmas feels sometimes. That's just how we think of it. And when I send cards overseas and things, it's nice to kind of create those cards, but I like creating some a little bit more summery and a little bit lighter and a little bit non-traditional kind of colors. So these are a couple of happy holidays and Merry Christmas cards this way too. Then I'm also going to do this is the thank you word die set. This happens to be from scrapbook.com, but any of your word dies are going to work perfectly. You could have stamped something on here. You could have popped a little piece of vellum across and heat embossed some words on some vellum. So many different options for how you can finish off these cards, but I chose to die cut these out 3 times each to make a nice thick chipboard like sentiment, and I am just using a little bit of the matte medium glue and a makeup sponge to sponge on the glue evenly onto my little word dies, and then layer them up 3 thick, so I have the words thank you. And then this is the fun part where we kind of get to start revealing all of these gorgeous cards. So first of all, the blue one is going to be the thank you, and I can peel back, as I said, a couple of things that I love about this. One, you can peel back pretty much as fast as you want, and this masking tape is not going to tear, it's not going to stick, it's not going to rip anything. And it gives a perfectly crisp, clear edge where that black ink is. Now, that was like 3 layers of ink of that black ink and no bleeding at all. So that is a real stress saver in my opinion. I know I can use it and rely on it, and I don't have to worry about if the ink has bled through. So that's just what I use, and I will link all of these items that I've used in today's video. If they are still available, I will link them down below. Usually if they're not available, I just won't link them, and I know I apologize for that. It's really frustrating, but it just is what it is, and I love to use all of the things that I have in my craft space, and I'm sure if you look around your craft space that you'll have some things that you're able to do pretty much the same techniques with what you have as well. So I'm finishing off this blue card. I've got the thank you glued on there. Very simple, but a really fun card to make. And all 3 of these cards didn't take me long at all. Look at those beautiful crisp lines. A frame really goes a long way when you are creating these cards, and these are straight onto the card bases. I'm going to finish these ones off. I'm just cutting a little bit off the bottom of the tree stump there so that it kind of sits nice and even with the bottom of my ink. I thought about just putting it on right to the bottom, but it kind of interrupted that gorgeous crisp frame, so I decided to just cut it off nice and flat to go on the bottom. This little birdie here is going to sit a little bit to the right. I did glue down the tree stump nice and flat with some liquid glue, and then I popped the little bird up on some foam, and this one says Merry Christmas. And then for the yellow one, I'm going to pop the stump more so in the middle and just cut it off flat like I did the other one. And these gorgeous little birds are, as I said, not very Christmassy, a little bit non-traditional, but just a really nice card that I'm able to send out to some friends or some family. to wish them a happy holidays. I hope you have enjoyed this video, remembering about using the same colour for stenciling. We don't have to have multiple colours of all the inks. It doesn't matter what kind of inks you have, whether they're dyes, pigments, hybrids, anything you're able to give it a go with, and you don't even notice any of that ink blending that we did in the first part. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!